Hello, David McMillan here with, I think it was the second to last Shaun Attwood weekly lockdown reports. The lockdown advice, coronavirus weekly, and I had my reporter's hat on for some of it. And I actually made an effort to make it current. We're talking about Google mapping in some of them and how to make contacts, as well as an interesting story about a girl I met on a plane traveling into Ecuador. Yes, it was. And going back to Colombia. I saw her on both legs 3 days apart, but she told me on the first flight that she was staying 3 weeks. What was going on? Let's see what was really happening there. By the way, nothing to do with coronavirus, but most of this stuff is not. See you after. You know what I had to do? I had to Control Alt Delete, get into the task manager, uh, force close Skype, then reload it up and call you. Wow, I mean, I don't know what's got into it. It's what I think it is. Boris has been giving instructions to. He's got a night job. He's moonlighting as a technician. And you, I shouldn't talk really. No, it's a feature of that. I was going to flip from background to background, but
Bit
here we.
risky.
Mm. Well, if people have just tuned in at
Hold
some
on.
point,
Do you want to
mm,
introduce you?
okay, you might as well. I
Okay.
won't. I'm just scratching for something. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It gives me a hunchback sometimes too. This. You can hear me all right, then,
Yeah,
can't you?
fine.
Oh, good, good, good. All right. So, who are you, Sean? I've seen you about.
Here we go again. It is our weekly coronavirus lockdown chat with David McMillan.
You had to think there for a minute, didn't you? Who the hell is this guy?
He is the author of Unforgiving Destiny, which is on my bookshelf behind me.
Yes.
And he has his own YouTube channel. The link is in the description box. I urge you to go over. David has been incarcerated for approximately 20 years on 5 continents. He's been on death row twice. He has escaped.
The
He has
food
been,
was better on death row there, Sean. I should say that. Yes, that's true. And
the,
when it got too much, I did escape a couple of times.
the Australians did a movie about him for some reason, perhaps because he was a TV presenter in his childhood, as you can tell by his eloquent use of the language and accent.
And I have
Welcome,
very.
David.
Thank you, Sean. It's good to be introduced as a complete desperado. And I have. It's probably worth saying I was a smuggler during the last 40 years until I retired about 12 years ago. I retired, but the forces of darkness that I'll refer to the agencies, they weren't quite happy with that, so they invited me on a couple of extra little excursions. I tell you what, with the past, folks, I get quite a bit of correspondence from people who've been banged up for one thing or another, fairly low level stuff. But you can't win a case anymore. I mean, the whole grisly story comes out. Uh, hello, something's clicking now. Um, you still got me, or is it just my end? I can't see my own picture.
I've got a little circle of you.
Oh, well, that's a little circle.
Yes.
Hang on. Let
So
me
what,
just.
while you concentrate on that, I will speak to the audience.
Mm,
So this week I have finished the Last Kingdom with
mm.
Uhtred, son of Uhtred, and now I've moved on to Medici. That's how it's pronounced. Oh,
I
he's
see.
back. He's
Oh,
back.
yes, I'm back. It was asking me to choose choose a background there. What was that about Medici? With the Medici family?
Yeah, there's a series on Netflix. I was looking for something swashbuckling after watching
Right.
Last Kingdom, and I'm nearly completed the first episode of Medici, and it is pretty good so far. So I'll see. I'll give it 3 or 4 episodes. If it's up there like The Last Kingdom, then I'll keep going with it.
I think your choice is probably directed by wanting to escape from the immense pressures of. I mean, you, Sean, London-based investigative journalist. Um, you were a victim in a sense. The more extreme the news gets, I seem to have disappeared again. Just
The
I don't know why.
pressure is from YouTube
Mm,
on anyone right now who's interviewed David Icke and London Real. The video today, they just did their swan song. It is
yeah,
titled "It's Over," and Brian at London Real has said he just spent an hour on the phone with YouTube, and he's convinced he's not going to have a channel any day now.
really.
Yeah.
Um, uh, what they're getting? Has he been given any clue about that, or is he's just a sense?
So they took down one of his videos, an interview with David Icke, in which David Icke had mentioned 9/11. They said it was a violation of the policy and guidelines and also gave him a strike. And
Wow.
they said, two more strikes and you're out. Now, his response has been to ask the public to sign a petition to force YouTube to put all of his videos back up,
Mm,
which I don't think was the best strategy if you did not want to. I mean, if you didn't want to remain on YouTube, maybe it was a good strategy. If you want to go out in style, but if you
yeah,
wanted to remain on YouTube, they are the biggest game in town for videos.
that's
They
true. I mean, where else
they
can you
set
go?
they set the rules,
Mm.
play by the rules, or lose your channel, basically.
I suppose we have to accept the fact that it's as though being invited into somebody's house. You know, if you don't play by the house rules, I guess they're entitled to kick you out. Though I don't suppose there's any. If we happen to have a Norwegian ice flow encrusted server handy, you don't happen to have one of those, we could run our own stuff as an independent. Uh, I'm getting little dings from the machine, but it's still there. But
We could use your height disadvantaged servants that you had in the prison in Thailand, I believe, was it?
yes, while I was there, oddly enough, I ended up with servants in Thailand and well, in Pakistan as well, in Karachi. But in Thailand, everybody had, there was um, an American guy who had a couple of little Vietnamese running around. And he came up to me and said, um, you know, they used to carry his water and make food for him and that kind of thing. He said, David, don't don't use the word slaves. They know the word slaves. You know, we shouldn't use it. But
Many of the viewers are probably astounded that there exists a prison servant class. They've probably never even heard of that.
there very much is, and we're because in Karachi, because it was part of the Raj inheritance, you could say, that was very formalized in the sense that there were things you had to do for your servants. These, I should explain, were simply uh, poor or orphaned or friendless prisoners who'd come in and not been lost in the system, been intentionally crushed by it. If you wanted to go to court, you had to um, pay the trustee to put you on a list, and then the guard to put you on a van, and then once you got to court, then you had to bung, not much. I'm talking about, $5 or something, or even less, to the clerk of the court to bring you before the judge. So that just was impossible for somebody. I had one eye in Karachi, and he'd lost the eye because of a rather thorough questioning from the local police. He was on a gun charge, and it was the same wrinkled photocopy of a catalogue gun that probably 23 other prisoners in Karachi Central Jail were on the same charge. And when that actually came before a judge, they all got a big laugh out of it and said, all right, you can go home now. You've got anywhere to go. Oh, no, don't tell me. They couldn't stand any more sad stories today, and they let them go. So after about 6 months, it was good form to arrange to have your servant sent to court, and pretty much you never see him again. But I should say, for people planning on trading in any form in countries where a simple thing can have you locked up on trumped-up charges, should bear in mind that you need to kind of know all of these rules and not to play your hand too early, not to get desperate. A lot of Westerners have handed over 5,000-10,000 just on chance. There's usually a couple of Westerners in those prisons. In Thailand, less so, but certainly in Pakistan and India, who will sidle up to you and say, Shaun, look, you're not getting on too well in that 160-man dormitory there, catching your stale beans down a piece of rainpipe guttering pressed through the bars into a crumbling chapati. And while you're catching your breath, this good guy, another Westerner, will say, look, there is a way out, I can arrange something, but no, phone is produced, communications, are reopened, a lot of tears shed, as you can imagine, and then money gets transferred over. When I'd had enough of that, I ended up being ghosted to Hyderabad prison, and quite happily I was in, well, not entirely happily, I thought I might rot there, but I was in solitary in the Bund ward, the closed ward, for about 6 weeks without anybody at all knowing where I was. So that, people, is my qualification here today, and has been for lockdown advice. The smuggling operations from time to time yielded fruit, and what was that? Was he a racing driver or a footballer who was asked what he did with all his millions? And he said something like, well, I spent a lot of it on great-looking women, champagne, rock and roll, drugs of my choice, and fast living, and the rest I wasted. So he clearly didn't think the above named were wasteful in any way. So this, while I was in solitary, it seemed quite peaceful in a way, and I did have the pleasure of seeing a very upset prison warden, governor, come around every so often, looking hopefully. And I see here's the thing at that stage. The only person I paid a little to was the guy who was in charge of the isolation block. And the payment was not to get out of there, but was not to do anything that the prison boss told him to do to me. Oh, look, beat him every day or something, starve him to death. And what to do in there? Well, it was very much different from the kind of lockdown we've had. Or, by the way, are we really still on lockdown? Or what's going on?
After the most recent announcement that you can exercise unlimited now outdoors, and more people are supposed to be going back to work, there's more traffic out, isn't there?
There certainly has been. A couple of days ago, my sat-nav took me through, not Richmond Park, but another one in the south. And it was rotten with joggers. Oh, sure, you could. And the cyclists, arrogantly 2 by 2, sometimes 3 abreast. I felt like if I'd been in a borrowed car, if I'd been driving your car, Shaun, I would have mowed them down happily with my mask on. I tell you what, some of the scallywags have been getting up to a right load of mischief with those masks on. Half of my slick triple foldable telescopic ladders that I use to put in CCTV cameras I had the pleasure of watching it on the only security system I put in. The guy sort of winked at me and tugged at his little mask as he was in the storeroom loading up. I could talk to him too. I've got feedback. it is bad karma, Jack, and you will not have a happy life. Well, the people who owned the building insisted on the police, and I said, it's pointless. I've had lots of dealings with the police, and it's never ended happily, I can tell you. Well, they came around and looked at the video and said, we don't know him. Like, so if you could help us maybe by giving us a name and address and perhaps taking us around when we're not busy, of course, and we might slap the old bracelets on him, if there's some evidence, but it doesn't look like there will be. He had people have been alerted to medical equipment, as you know, a lot of PPE going missing, and this personal protective equipment is being, used by scallywags up and down the nation. There are supposedly dealers outside of London who are running around in scrubs, the green sort of could be surgeons, high-end nurse stuff, with it could be a library card for all anybody knows, but they've kind of got a magic marker and written NHS on it for the health service, and it makes them untouchable, doesn't it? Have you seen the waters part for anybody who looks remotely medical? I've had to dust off my old stethoscope just to get through the crowd. In fact, I was kind of covered in paint today somewhere from doing something or other. When I was lining up at the ATM to get some cash out for weekend entertainment, there's still a few around, I managed to bustle past quite a few people and say, I've got a worker there to pay. And well, the guy driving the truck with highway maintenance written on it. I should say, people, not all vehicles that might look like utilities of some sort with highway maintenance, they are maintenance, but they're not any highway we know of. It's just I'm making threatening noises, my little machine. I hope people like this background. I don't know how much of it will end up on the final thing.
You'll find out in the comments.
No doubt. Oh, by the way, I saw a comment from a guy called Michael Porter, who I think you ran something with a kind of idiots with microphones, wasn't it? Some old friends from Witness or somewhere.
Oh, some kids from Witness, yeah.
Yeah, and Michael said in his comments, well, after Hidden Shadows or Out of the Shadows, people are getting the titles a bit slightly confused, but I know what he meant. And something else kind of dark that you'd put up there. Michael said, oh, my brain needs a rest. I suppose it was pretty intense. I mean, you've had what? Almost 200,000 views of the main doc.
Yeah, the release of the documentary, our first ever documentary, which James worked so hard on, was on Monday. It's called UK's Hidden Shadows. If people haven't seen it, I'll put the link in the description box and a pinned comment. It has got up to about 200,000 views today. Yeah.
Wow. And deservedly so. A very slick and professional. You know what I think it is, Shaun? A sign of the times, isn't it? That the networks, the big channels. I mean, who's watching mainstream TV anymore? Hardly ever.
It's like an old generation of people who still watch it.
And have you noticed how well, you wouldn't have noticed because you don't watch the soaps, but My Dearest, sometimes her own form of escape is in that, and a blessed relief to me for little half-hour sections. They have decided not to mention the obvious. But I think with the same rationale that if they bring the dreaded virus into their plot lines, people will tune out thinking, oh no, I just couldn't take it. I didn't come for this. But I'll tell you what, they are on the sly, like that subliminal advertising that you get in a lot of Netflix shows, where everybody's taking an Uber for some reason everywhere, or driving certain kinds of Mitsubishis there. But here, this is sort of public service subliminal advertising. In the soaps, I think there was somebody washing his hands, and for some reason the camera was closely focused on that. And he was a cook or something in the plot, such as it was. And, you know, soap, 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 leather, leather, leather. Better safe than sorry, he said, leaning into the camera. It wasn't the most subtle, what do they call them? Nudges, aren't they?
Did you mean soap, 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 lather, 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 or leather, leather, leather? Was that a Freudian slip?
Oh, really? Which did I say? Leather, leather.
Leather, leather, leather.
God, I think I've been channeling your past there, Sean, for some reason.
You've been fantasizing about me in those leather chaps again, David.
Yes, I should tell you, and I meant to when a couple of weeks ago Sean ducked off to have a little look at our questions list. But what the hell, he's here watching. Did you know that below the waist, Sean is naked? Yes, at this very moment. The nice girls out there tuned in. Oh, there's nothing. No, don't get me wrong. He's not up to anything. He's just. What's the reason for it? Comfort.
When I sit here with you, David, I prefer not to be naked. I prefer to wear my lime green mankini.
Ah, right. Well, I tell you what, you don't want to have one of the elastic sides snap on that one, especially when you're not live on air, which they almost are.
And
Um,
how about yourself? Are you the kind of gentleman who goes in for a cod piece?
um, I can. I didn't really understand them until I was at the V&A. It's a gallery museum in London, where they had some medieval clothing, and the idea that a kind of strap-on patch around the nether regions makes perfect sense, because to untangle the buttons weren't buttons as we know them. I mean, these are the small but unappreciated inventions that made humanity what it is. The zip, the YKK, that company, and other things. But so if they wanted to drop their drawers for a quick slash, this was a major thing. So, yeah, I know I got it all wrong too. I thought, wow, those rampant medievalists, running around having to be at the ready all the time. But I don't think it was that. But some of it. Have you ever noticed the what children wear in China? Like babies, infants, toddlers. They wear little pants. I don't know why I'm saying this. It's not really good lockdown advice, but it's take your mind off it anyway. And they wear these. Not a nappy. That'd be expensive, wouldn't it? No, it's just a little pair of shorts with. Oh, I've disappeared again. A little pair of shorts with a slit in it,
Oh my
and
God.
yeah, and that way they can kind of like it doesn't matter what they get up to. Um,
Did you manage to acquire a codpiece in prison? I had a friend who was a giant, a 6.5 trans friend, and she made a beaded G-string, and she also melted plastic into sex toys.
oh, right. That's well, and this was in prison, did you say?
Yes,
And she did a fair old trade, did she?
yes.
Huh? Look, everybody has to be flexible depending on where they find themselves. It's not just when in Rome, but when in the striped Bari hole, as Alex Delage from Clockwork Orange used to say. You have to adapt to it. And since you mentioned this, a sex toy manufacturer in the UK that have modified their lines to include a kind of soft, springy ear protector for face masks. Um, the old-fashioned ones, which I think the South African president was struggling with a few weeks ago. He was trying to demonstrate it, but he probably has his servants do all that kind of thing. Do put his tie on and so on. But this one, they've manufactured soft, that special rubber that goes on sex toys. I believe. I mean, not that I've ever utilized them in that way.
How does that special rubber feel?
Um, well, I investigated it, he quickly said, because in my endless quest for novel materials in which to smuggle things, um, Um, yeah, I found that was not really well what we were aiming for, me and Pablo and Jose, as we sat around the Kali Club, um, was something that would have been we came to call the jelly belly. So the smuggler would have, instead of wearing huge amounts of suspicious clothing, would just have a paunch. But here's the fine tuning on it. He would have a kind of Hawaiian t-shirt that was a couple of sizes too small, in denial about his fat gut. So it would kind of press against it. And when he got patted down at the routine security, you can imagine customs and the anti-narcotics people over in the corner watching as they go through there, because it's kind of pre-test. It would spring back. And yes, as you point out, the very same rubber used in sex toys made quite a good outer layer beyond the sponge, as it were. So whatever he was carrying in there, I'm not sure what it was. Jose and Pablo said it was sand from their golden beaches. Perhaps it was. Who was I to question it? I was only there out of technical interest, but and so I think the flaw in it was it was a little cooler than human flesh. But then again, the hands don't really stay gripped to those porky, sweating, ginger-headed losers that I used to dress up for such enterprises. I used to give them plastic belts that wouldn't set off the metal detectors and check their shoes that wouldn't do the same with any unfortunate hobnail stuff. A kind of interesting neck of the world. And I'm telling you this, lockdown fans, because I'm just trying to take your mind away from a tedious advice. And if you're not watching, which I don't blame you, but you're probably listening, you might know that I had to take a quick flight down to Ecuador from Medellin. And as I got on the plane, this very swish, flash-looking girl clip-clopped her way down in these extraordinary boots of snakeskin and high heels. I thought, wow, she was really overdoing it. I mean, she really astounded the security people. But she was, I'll tell you, I kind of thought, just as an exercise, what would those 6-inch kind of Cuban-esque heels take? Well, I suppose the answer is about 800 grams of sand. And was I just pushing my own guilt for the filthy, depraved life I lived onto somebody, some poor, innocent traveller? Because I ended up sitting next to her, perchance, and she said she was going to Ecuador to, what was it? Oh, you visit her sister or something like that. Yes, woof, woof, woof. Anyway, we landed at, it's not Toledo, Tulpec, I think, a tiny little hill border town, which is your entry into the country, and that's where all the action is. I mean, those people who like to travel the world and look for unusual places, people who take holidays during the Civil War and Lebanon. If they go to, I should get the name right, but it's TUL something or other in Ecuador. So that is your first entry point, and she was kind of very alert then. Anyway, I'll bring this to a conclusion, because was I just putting my world on her innocent one? I think, did she say she was a teacher? Maybe. I I ended up in a hotel room watching endless strange videos, and my visitor couldn't visit me. I found out later that his career had been completely misunderstood by the authorities down there, and he was what we'd call helping with their inquiries, Shaun. So I watched Vanilla Sky with what was it, that little guy, Tom Cruise. Yeah, quite an interesting picture and a good lockdown one. It's sort of is the reality you're in the real world or some kind of simulation? Yeah, good stuff. I don't think Tommy Cruise actually understood the plot for a minute, but he knew how to say his lines. So I ended up back on a flight 3 days later, and whom should I see but the same girl? But she was dressed down. She had a scruffy old knit jersey on and just desert boots or something, and wouldn't talk to me because I knew that this huge change of personality had taken place in just 3 days. And she had told me she was going for 3 weeks, by the way. So I didn't want to embarrass her. But as we deplaned and I went back to my life and she to hers, whatever that was, I did sidle up to her and said, well, congratulations, but I think you did it in reverse. You should have been in the jersey going down there, not the other way around. But yeah, it was a calling, I guess. So, yes, take your mind to faraway places, lockdown people, because, Shaun, I think I couldn't understand Boris either. That's Johnson, our Prime Minister, you foreign devils who are watching. He said, you can do this and not do this. And, oh, well, let me just get myself back there. Have I come back?
Well, while you concentrate on that, I'll tell them that you are the author of 2 books, Escape, and also Unforgiving Destiny. And the links to those in the description box below this video. Only paperback and ebook, though. There are problems getting the audio up.
Yes, heavy distraction on my part, but I'm chewing my way through the recordings. But here's what I was going to say about the advice we've been given. I think it's simply what's happened?
You've been rasping a little bit all the way through it, but it's got really loud now.
Oh, has it? It
Yeah,
might too loud. Well, I'll keep my distance from the microphone.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I hope so.
Okay.
It could be my guttural growl, I suppose. What I think the government here is doing is simply seeing what happens by letting us run around and do our worst. Because the net result is people will. Have you noticed people are a lot closer than the 2 meters?
Yes, and I think that the government's action is going to really cause economic chaos.
You mean a lot of people get sick?
No, I think that the stock market has jumped right back up and Bitcoin's jumped right back up as if all this is over. But I think that it's bounced and there's going to be massive amounts of people can't pay their debts, can't pay their mortgages, and that's going to cause the economy to just go to spiral downwards.
Well, you've had your ear to the ground on these things for many years, so you should know. I think lockdowners take that on board. So they really, people should expect these waves, or they shouldn't run out and put all their holdings into Bitcoin because it won't hold.
Well, like we've said previously on this channel, Bitcoin peaked, what was it, 2 years or so ago. And ever since then, it's been trending down. It's a huge bubble. It has massive rallies. And I believe it's slowly working its way down to near zero.
And also, I've never been fond of it anyway, because I'm sure the authorities take a particular interest in the movements of the transfers with those things. So I don't think, of course they won't know the who, but they can there are ways around it. So I don't think it's as safe as all that. But
I'm still getting messages from people who are getting sucked in by gurus telling them, pay for my secret information and I can make you all this money off cryptocurrencies.
Oh, it's all over Instagram. Every second paid ad is some crypto trillionaire flushing around wads of currency. Well, I don't know where the currency came from. It certainly wasn't anything to... Once you... the money that you've bought it with, I think mostly it's regular newbies to trading who go in for this. It's it's held up by that, and it's going to be halved again. This is something that Bitcoin does every so often to um, supposedly to control the inflation, and it was in the original source code for it. Uh, what it means is that the reward that Bitcoin miners get for manufacturing their Bitcoin gets halved again. I think it's done it twice before, and the next one's in 2024. Now and they'll only get 6 Bitcoin for X trillion hours of their machines doing calculations or whatever it has to. I mean, I don't think the work that miners do is actually any use, is it? It's just something to take up time and slow them down. I don't. It's not as though the blockchain rents out processing power to third parties to profit from the mining activity. It seems to be just a feature of giving it somehow a value by notional work done, but it's very artificial.
It's a bauble on a Christmas tree.
Mm.
A Christmas tree that's gone past its expiration.
The conspiracy people that love all that like to see that this is all the COVID-19 thing has all been engineered for somebody's profit. I've looked at it and thought, well, okay, let's say we all knew this was going to happen. Where would you invest without losing? And I can't think of anything that actually profits you particularly much. You might say that when oil did a couple of crazy things and went into reverse, and tiny things make a difference. Oh, by the way, did you notice Elon Musk's little meltdown on Twitter took 14 billion off the value of Tesla there for a while?
Yeah, and also the people who did profit were the people who bought Zoom and also the biotech shares, because they have rallied to all-time highs, some of the biotech shares and Zoom, since the precipitous 50% drop in the stock market. And so profits were made by some people.
And that's true. There have been some companies that have done well by but mostly they've been in the fortunate position of being able to switch stock very easily, and they had a quite good logistics setup.
Most people have been hurt by the fall.
Oh, Jeff Bezos has kept ahead of itself. Mind you, I don't know. Would you want to look as ugly as him with all that money? I know. Yeah. I don't know. He's got some glamour puss as a wife or girlfriend. I forget which. Probably both. But really,
put some leather chaps on him. He might not look too bad.
It certainly looked the part.
Cowboy hat and leather chaps.
Though a sideshow dwarf is more what I imagine him to be.
Really. Bit of rasping there. You getting closer to your mic again?
No, it's just switching itself around.
You cursed yourself when you chastised my equipment the other week. Ever since then, you've had nothing but technical difficulties. This is your karmic fate.
It could be. Really, I think I'll have to invest in something a little more off the shelf than and twiddling it with myself. I know you've got the fanciest stuff around, what Canon cameras and Rode microphones and all of that sort of stuff. Oh, it is fancy there. No, I can hear mine clicking around, so God knows what the sound's like. But
that's just the sex toy you left on.
Oh, it could be. A guy with the same surname as my most used one, called John McMillan, was asking
a fellow McMillan.
Yes, no, that couldn't have done him any good. And John too. That was my dad's name, who was a complete invention of his own ideas. Who knows who he was really? I mean, what his personality was. But anyway, this John McMillan was asking about, it was lockdown reading or general reading. I think he was asking about what are the best psychology books. Now, I don't know about you, but my feeling is keep away from them at all costs. They'll only mess you up. Um, that I think, John, if you're out there, what read novels, and if you want to really look into your own grubby soul, uh, maybe grubby or not, I don't know, but you could try John Fowles' classic from the mid 60s called The Magus. That Sean's a story about young English guy who becomes treats his girlfriend badly, ends up on an island at a boys' school there, and befriends a kind of a bit like a Greek tycoon, you could say, a bit like Onassis, and people would probably have no idea who the shipping magnate was, but he was almost one of the world's richest men at one stage, had a quite famous yacht for something. Anyway, he's dead. His daughter Christine inherited it. But this character was like that, and takes this slightly snotty young teacher and manipulates everything in his life. You see, Sean, believe it or not, there are people out there who think that nothing is an accident, that everything in their own lives has been arranged by somebody. That light didn't go red and stop them in their tracks for no reason. No, it was engineered because they missed something that happened. I mean, you must have come across people like that.
Who believe in destiny and predestiny.
Well, who, and further than that, believe that some arcane, obscure manipulator behind the scenes is arranging their life's events for some purpose, which is yet to be revealed to them.
I would recommend that the gentleman who's looking for inspiration read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, who was a slave who became a philosopher, and also The Great Quotes by George Seldes, Seldes. I picked up a book recently myself. I'll just see if I can grab it.
Yes.
Losing my headset. Here it is.
And that's all right.
The Daily Stoic.
Daily Stoic.
That has
Well, I'm
from
daily
all...
and I'm very stoic. I don't give a shit about anything. That's true. Yeah. Have you always had this interest in the classics, there, Sean?
No, I never read anything prior to my arrest. I thought I knew everything.
Ah, courtesy of what? Just psychic good fortune.
Courtesy of an ego bigger than the Grand Canyon.
I wasn't. I was a bit of a reader in my teens, but the OAG flight manual was my bedside companion. It listed every flight, and I mean, there wasn't any internet in those days in the 80s. And I'd flip, it was the size of a telephone book. It was massive. Can you imagine every flight in the world and its timetables and its connections? And you could look up what other flights were going on at the airport when you landed, where you could jump on and get, and, it'd be great epiphanies and moments when I'd see some little San Andreas island off the coast of Mexico that had a Panamanian connection and also linked down to Bogota. And I'd go, aha, and I'd fly there, only to find that one or two had sometimes kind of were doing exactly the same thing. And we would meet up, and once clear of the airport, they'd end at a hotel and they wouldn't take much hunting down, because it's a bit of form that when you arrive in a new a dust bowl or some hotbed, or like some part of Venezuela or something. What's that island up top of Venezuela? That Margarita. Anyway, you go to not the top hotel, but just a 4-star one that's recommended as a bit of a spot, and you put yourself in the bar there, or the coffee shop. Coffee shop's a bit of a better choice. Bar, a lot of professionals digging at you. But in that coffee shop, all the businessmen who want to feel out the town, that's where you'll find them. And in places like St. Andreas, which used to be a bit of a pirate's island at one stage off the coast there, I met two or three who, were unaccountably relaxed. And we all kind of, have you ever had those conversations with a stranger, Shaun? So, what do you think of the town? Oh, not too bad. I'm new here myself. Yes, yes. In the travel industry. Yes, that's me, in the travel industry. Yes, it's good to be in the travel industry. Listen, shithead, just don't bomb it out, all right? Leave something for everybody else. No. And they have this little look on their faces like, is this some kind of crazy narc? Is this a trap? And then you give them another look back. I haven't got time for this. And they'd say, no. So you come to this sort of little conspiratorial agreement not to tread on each other's toes. And you could very quickly sort out the wannabes and the losers, because if the next night he was back there, that wasn't a good sign. If the girlfriend was suddenly wheeled down from whatever state she was in a room, that's not a particularly good sign either. The ones you'd end up staying in touch with for the kind of loners who I think I had a kind of ex-smugglers loners club of people who had very private lives but managed to survive. Little useful tips would come along. Say, what's new at Costa Rica? Oh, same. It's all good. Which means it's all open. Now, lockdowners, where were we up to? No, he didn't really say anything. But I suppose my real point about the sudden changes, as of today, and we're recording this on a Friday evening, slightly out of whack, but looking back on the past week, it's you can see that people are more light-hearted about it, aren't they? They're
Yeah, definitely. They can see that the daily deaths are dying down, and it's over. Wave one's on its way out.
And the magic R number, yes. I think it's down at about 0.4 or something, which anything under 1 is supposed to be good. That's the R number.
Are you predicting a winter wave too?
Oh, you mean what, for next winter? Another as
For
far away as that?
For the coming winter, do you think there will be a wave two, or do you think before that, after that, or no wave two at all?
I think vaccines are a distant blur on the horizon. I think it's something that we'll end up just living with, and there will be kind of manageable peaks. But as somebody said the other day, it's allowed a kind of winnowing of the chaff from the wheat that feeds society. Those people who companies wanted to get rid of or prefer work from home, their time has come. We've just leapfrogged a little bit into our own future. On the bright side, well, I thought it was the bright side, and I was going to save this for a kind of bright side end of chat thing, but it isn't. Those pictures of all the sheep wandering down streets and deer creeping out of the park and going down the shopping mall that are all closed up, and I think there was some other a native animal. Apparently it's quite terrible for them without us humans to prop them up and run the little programs that we do, and the mini zoos and so on.
The ducks. There's a little village near me, a historic village called Shia, and I've never seen such desperation in the eyes of the ducks. They're running all over the streets, the roads, coming up to humans and just like, like you can touch them. They're literally just coming up to your feet. They're like,
Not saying feed me, you
yeah,
bastard. Who
yeah,
were you
yeah,
last
yeah.
week? Yeah. And there's that too. And also, I saw a story a couple of days ago. Um, we, in some area, we've been keeping the herons away from the little ducklings because if left to their own heronic lifestyle, they just get lazy. They don't go for regular heron food. Um, they, I haven't seen any breakfast cereal for herons lately, but they just chew up all these ducklings as they come out. And okay, a couple of conservationists have been dragging out those little statues of um, wolves on prey in a prey position, but a lot of it we've been protecting. So, Greta Thunberg, it wasn't all bad from the grown-up side. We did our bit. Yeah.
I threw a whole chicken out for the fox the other night, only to see the badger just slip down the hill and snatch it.
I thought you were going to say only to see an Albanian woman in a burqa snatch it up and start gnawing at it because her husband had disappeared somewhere. Um, well, at least the badger had something to eat. Um, why are you on a friendly basis with your local foxes?
Yes, there's a fox and there's three badgers and there's a few deer as well that come around.
All right.
So mo most nights I just throw some bread out and watch the fox and the badgers have this like standoff over the bread. But I thought I'll experiment now and just put out a whole chicken and see what happens.
That's good. Now, I should say my bit of advice for people this week as to stop dreaming about yourself, and you must be overlooking your dismal future. It's not going to be that good or not that different. Look at something closely by whatever means you can. I think I had my little miniature toy last week, which was a survivalist radio. This one, I have to hold it near my head, is really nothing better than a fancy magnifying glass. But there's a point to that. It has a little UV light there for checking on fake money that people might give you, and it goes 40 times, up to 90 times with its tiny little lenses. So you can carry that around. And why any of this? Because, Shaun, we're not looking at anything closely enough to understand it. Here is your opportunity to look at something closely. Don't you think we give such careless attention to the real things around us? Um, People don't know what's going on. And, oh, look,
People
uh,
should start by looking inside themselves and looking at their own lives, I think.
yes, and I'll just try and get myself back here because as soon as I showed um, a lens in opposition, I disappeared from that. But I'm back. Um,
David
yes,
McMillan this week is sponsored by Spycraft.
it's a bit like that, though. I was after a pair of those glasses that surgeons use to look at something close because I wanted to kind of manufacture some tiny camera or something. I mean, yeah, you're right, Sean. There's other things I should be doing.
If it's role play, you can just spit it out.
Yeah, I don't know. Look,
Oh,
this thing's being very tiresome with me. Come
very
back
daring.
here. Yeah.
We're about 5 minutes away from the hour.
Are we? Oh, well, I'll just get myself back on there. It's trying to trick me, actually, into adjusting its settings, but I know better than to start fooling around with that. So, yes, you. I think people are starting to feel like they've been sort of tricked, don't you? That, wait a minute, what was all this lockdown business about, really? Was it just an overreaction by the government? Was it simply to stop the sight of the decrepit, the pre-existing conditioners, or the people who've suffered enough, dropping dead in the hospital corridors? Did they get it completely wrong? I don't blame people for feeling that way a bit. Um, did if you'll get that, Sean, but within a couple of weeks, people will feel, wait a minute, what were they doing on this worldwide Truman Show while we were behind our enforced closed door? Were they just rearranging the set? I think for a paranoid, it's going to make them much, much worse, you know. But I can reassure you, paranoids, I didn't pay the slightest attention. That I broke every single rule in it, even though my work is essential, I assure you. But I was out there every day, and if anybody was changing the sets, if the makeup artists were, you know, having the pedestrians and the local Candyman, and you know, your strange fact that the shopkeepers seem to change from time to time, and there wasn't anything going on because what, you think your life is cambered up? It might be, but it's only by your nasty uncle. There's no great force out there. So, you can see that people. What do you think? People just congratulate themselves and think, "Oh, we beat it. We did a great job."
Well, I'm just curious as to, you said it's going to assimilate and it'll always be there.
Mm.
A lot of people think that it's gone and we get off lockdown, then wave two comes and the whole cycle starts again, back to lockdown. How virulent is this strain going to be? And this repeats over a period of years, perhaps.
Well, okay, then the solution to that, though, might be I came across the first of a few people in my travels that said, "Oh, I had it last month." Well, you don't know, unless they can actually produce a document, they might have just had a bit of a cold. But we could go back to the cowpox days, as it. Now, I should give a little forewarning to this bit of medical advice. It's all bunkum. But nonetheless, to avoid smallpox in the old days, you sort of vaccinate yourself a few hundred years ago because milkmaids didn't get it. And why was that? Because they were immune to it. So they'd give a little scratching from somebody who'd have it. And one of the pustules, it was quite revolting. And the old quacks under then would scratch your arm and put a bit of it. So you would get it. But you would be getting it in a place that could handle it a bit more. So if you feel like, scratching somebody who's got it at the moment, don't feel bad. You'll only be repeating a tradition that goes back hundreds of years. Of course, you could drop dead, but that is only about 4 in 1,000. So I'll say very warm things at your funeral. Oh no, I won't. We're not allowed to gather for those. But I'll be thinking of you if you misunderstood my advice and it all went badly. But for most, it'll go well, don't you think?
Well, if you want to watch hours and hours of David, there are 8 podcasts filmed, 2 to 3 hours long on my channel. You can spend a whole weekend just back to back doing a David McMillan marathon. If you'd like to go over to his channel, the link is in the description box below this video. And if you're bored for reading material, there's always Unforgiving Destiny.
And it was a pretty tough road too, I can tell you, Shaun. Oh,
and,
look,
and
I've
Escape.
disappeared myself. Oh, come back. I'll just try and get back on for the last farewell seconds. Ah, yes, it's been ruthless tonight. I don't know why. I think it's karmic intervention on that sort. Yes, there's a load of old cobblers that I put out in books, but it'll certainly take your mind off that and has the novelty that it's all true. And if you want to see somebody go through life and make every possible mistake yet survive, that's where you go. Okay, Shaun. I won't say that that this is a banned word. This "stay safe" thing. It's a curse now, isn't it? So I won't say. What can we say? Safely stay with us, Shaun. How about that?
And we hope you've enjoyed this broadcast. And if you have, please subscribe. It is free. Subscription logo, bottom right hand corner. And like I said earlier, links to all of our other stuff in the description box. And hopefully, David will have a much better microphone this time next week, just like my nice Rode I've got here.
I have microphone envy, people. Well, and there you have it. This is the last I can find of the old coronavirus weekly reports with Shaun Attwood and myself. And I think they can reside on this channel for eternity. And there will be, if nothing else, a little capsule of the times in which we lived. I think there should be more of it. And by the way, by the time you see this, I should have something new on the one-to-one. Yeah, I think I found somebody interesting, somebody who has something to say. I'll let you know when I've got it in the can. Okay, you shouldn't really be up at this time of night. We all need to get our rest. I'm going to hang my hat and call it a night. Bye for now.